Good evening, this is woodblock printmaker Dave Bull, here in our shop on the second floor of the Mokuhankan building in Asakusa, Tokyo. And it's one of the last times I'll be here making one of these videos for you. And more about that at the end of this one. As you've already seen in the cold open, this video will show the process of making one of the new prints in the ongoing Ukiyo-e Heroes series that we're producing together with designer Jed Henry. Now it's been years, and I mean literally years, since I last produced a video showing one of these prints coming to life, and I'm very pleased to be finally able to bring you this one. The print, the Serpent Strikes, is a design that I've liked since the first moment I saw it. I think Jed has really outdone himself with the transformation of key elements of the game, the barrels and that cone of light, putting them into a milieu a world away from the original, and yet it's still instantly recognizable as the game itself. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about games. We're here to talk about a woodblock print coming to life. And before we start, I have to mention that this presentation is going to be a little bit different from most that we have done before. Up to now, whenever I do these videos, the sequence goes something like this. I brush color over the block. I put the paper in place. I rub to take the impression, and we then look at the result. And then do it again till we get to the end. But that means that there's always an important step in the process that gets omitted, and that's preparing and mixing the particular color. Now that part takes time, and I've always been afraid of having these presentations go on too long. But the fans have spoken strongly about that, telling me not to watch the clock while I'm doing these. So this time, for each color block in the sequence of making this print, I pointed the camera straight down onto the color mixing tile, and I just let it run while every color was mixed from basic ingredients. Now in some cases that just took a few seconds, yellow, splash of red, and go for it, and some it took a couple of minutes to make a nice deep rich brown. I also need to introduce you to the craftsman you will be watching this time round. Now, unlike most of the previous Ukiyo-e Heroes videos, where I myself sat at the bench to do the proofing job, I took my camera this time over to the workroom of one of the men who has been working with us for the past few years on making these prints, the very respected printer, Mr. Kenichi Kubota. Now, he's not an outgoing guy at all, and he wouldn't go along with my request to do an interview as part of this presentation. Getting my face on the internet? You gotta be kidding, what? But he did agree to let me bring my cameras along and just record the work while he did the initial proof printing of this block set. As you see, it came out just fine, and after I left his workroom at the end of the day's proofing, I gave him the go-ahead to begin work on the initial batch of real prints. This was 2 weeks or so ago, and he's now finished those. He did it in really good time, and Jed-san now has those prints in hand as I speak, and he's preparing to send them on their way to the waiting customers and collectors all over the world. But again, I'm talking too much. Let's get to the actual printmaking work. I'll do a bit of voiceover as we go to explain a few things as we go along, and in other places where I think that it's pretty much self-explanatory, I'll just sit quietly and watch together with you. Let's get on with the show. If this is the first proof printing of this block set, why is the key block already smeared with ink? It's because the carver, in this case, young Noriko Kawasaki, has taken some trial proofs of her own. She would have finished all the carving first, taken a proof, then gone over the image, lightly dressing some of the lines. She probably did this a few times in order to make sure all the line work was as nice as she could get it before sending the blocks back to me. This print has a double key block, as it were. You've just seen him print the main outlines in a strong black, but these figures in the distance need to be printed in a paler tone, so they needed to be cut onto a separate piece of wood. Okay, this is one of the color mixing segments that I mentioned earlier. Let's pause the action here for a moment and take a look at the acidic pigments that Kubota-san will be using today. We start with the jar at the lower left. This is the pigment known as Hon Yoko, and perhaps best translates as Carmen. Next to it is Bengara, a kind of dusty or red tone. It's kind of a rusty color. The next two jars, both blue, look similar under these lighting conditions, but they're actually quite different. The first one is indigo, long used in Japanese traditional printmaking. The one next to it is known by various names here, but is basically the color known in the West as Prussian blue. It came to Japan in the 1800s and was used very heavily in the famous landscape work by such people as Hokusai and Hiroshige. Above that is the yellow tone known generally as Shinsekie. This is a modern replacement for the traditional sekio, which was made of a combination of sulfur and arsenic. It made a beautifully soft yellow, but is no longer in daily use for obvious reasons. To the left of the yellow, Kubota-san has a small bowl of slightly diluted sumi, and the jar above that is the thicker version, which I don't think he will be using today. And that's it for a typical ukiyo-e printmaking job. There's no greens or purples or browns. It's the printer's job to make those, not to buy them. Okay, Kubota-san, let's get back to it.
どんな色でこんな色、どんな色がいいかなこんな色いいよできれば引き付け抜いちゃうと全部同じとこがいいよね。
Mixing on a tile like this is of course just for trial proofing jobs. It allows the printer to get a test print easily without wasting a ton of pigment by mixing large batches. Once everything is all decided, he will mix batches in a set of new clean bowls, of course enough to do the complete batch of prints.
パレットみたいだね。
綺麗でしょ。
あ、そうそうそう。まあね、絵描きのパレットみたいにさ、絵の具がいっぱいついてんだったらさ、いいけど。こうやってさ、やっててこの中ポンと
ありますよ。そう。
あちゃって、ああっていうのがね。
すぐティッシュを用意して、はい、
この中にね、この中に炭が落ちた。
もうアウトアウトアウトアウトアウトアウト、スプーンとかなんかすぐ
そう。くってね。
はいはい。
ぶつけないと。そういう失敗があるね。
The conversation there was about the risk of having pigment dripping into the wrong place. If you happen to accidentally drop a blob of blue into your yellow jar, for example, the entire batch of pigment would of course be totally ruined.
何の色ですかって言われても分かんないって言って、こんな色にして。
This is the first gradation on the print. It runs from top down, and he will use 2 brushes for it. The main brush is pretty saturated with color, and he then uses another empty brush to help feather the color, to push it back to nothing at the bottom. Here's that feathering step again, from a different angle. Kubota-san was moving pretty quickly all day, and I didn't catch all the color mixing steps. This one, for example, didn't have any color mixing. It was just a splash of very faint sumi. That's as far as we got during the morning. Kubota-san then laid the paper into a staggered formation to let the moisture even out, and covered the very small stack with some pre-moistened paper sheets. There is way more covering paper than there is printing paper. This is really important to help the moisture keep consistent. This block is now coming back for a second pass. The initial gradation was quite light, and he is now putting a second layer on, making the light beam more intensely deep at the end. This is a different type of gradation. It doesn't need the blank feathering brush. The gradation here runs from deep to nothing, all within the body of the brush itself. This gradation will also be done twice, once quite lightly extending a bit farther up the image, and then a second time with a more tight, dense stone staying near the bottom. Let's pause this here for a minute. Did you catch what he just did? Let's try a slow motion replay. He had a small piece of plastic in place covering the registration marks while he brushed the pigment onto the block. Without this, the corner would become messy with pigment, and this would show on the finished prints. And once the pigment is brushed on, flip, out of the way it goes. This is the same impression we saw back in the cold open to this video, the one that finishes it off. Fantastic work by Kubota-san, who had never seen this image until I showed up with the block set that morning. I had brought with me a printout of Jed's Photoshop master, and Kubota-san used that as a guide to create his own color palette. So there you have it, another in the ongoing series of Ukiyo-e Heroes prints. I'm so happy to be a part of bringing these things to life, Although I myself didn't actually make this one in a hands-on way myself, like I did with all the early ones in the series, and my name isn't on this, it says Carver Kawasaki Printer Kubota, I still feel responsible for getting this made, and I'm very proud of it. Now, before we sign off, I have to bring you up to date with a little bit of news. I said back at the beginning of this presentation that this is going to be one of the last videos that I will be bringing you here from our shop. But please don't misunderstand. It's not that I'm going to stop making videos, it's that I won't be making them here for much longer. Mokuhankan is moving. How far? About 4 meters, straight down. Sometime next month, we'll be relocating our shop space down into the first floor of this building, of which we will then be occupying all 3 floors. The first floor down there will be the shop itself, and at the back, a brand new print party room. The 3rd floor upstairs will remain as the workspace, the place where we prepare the wood blocks and the paper doing the sizing, things like that, as well as, of course, the workroom for our 4 printers there. And the second floor, formerly this shop, will become... But no, let's save that for a bit later. For now, I've got some work to do downstairs. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.